The biggest win of the young college football season, Texas took down Michigan in the Big House 31-12. Our continued reactions on today's episode of Locked On Longhorns.
You are Locked On Longhorns, your daily podcast on the Texas Longhorns. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked On Longhorns, the show. Jonathan Davis and Lacey Butler, your host. Tony Monk joining me once again every Monday of the football season from Spot On Sports. Today's episode of Locked On Longhorns brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Go to 5hourenergy.com and use promo code LOCKEDONCFB to receive 20% off your order. In the first segment, continued takeaways and reactions from Texas beating Michigan on the road on Saturday. In the second segment, our players of the game. And in the third segment, NFL football is back. So some of the Longhorns that showed up and showed out this weekend. All of that and more on today's episode of Locked On Longhorns, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So a whole lot of belt to ass this weekend, Tony. You know what I'm saying? Michigan, Texas went up there. Steve Sarkisian, Quinn Ewers and company went up there to Ann Arbor, biggest stadium in college football. One of the most historic venues in sports, 100,000 strong. We saw a whole lot of yellow in the crowd, and that yellow was leaving by the time the game finished. Because like I said, Texas, went in there, took care of business. Game really was over before halftime. Final score 31-12. Just a dominant performance in all three phases on the field. And then, of course, the coaching staff was great as well. So, now that you've had some time to digest it, now that you've had some time to sit on what you saw, Texas has now moved up to number 2 in the AP poll after that dominant performance, ahead of Ohio State, only behind Georgia. What are your thoughts on what Texas did on Saturday against Michigan in the Big House?
You know what? After so huge of a layover between what we looked at last year between both teams in the playoffs versus what we saw on Saturday, you almost couldn't even script something like that, John. It was crazy. A lot of my takeaways, all positives. And from last week, I told you that Texas left me wanting more. Well, this answers that. What I saw against Michigan, first off, the physicality from the defense, man. We know what Michigan was, right? We know about the talent drop-off that they kind of suffered. We know about the lack thereof of what they may have been missing from JJ, McCarthy going to the NFL and then Davis Warren taking over. But Michigan, you still expected them to be Michigan, and then they weren't, because Texas took Michigan out of their game, which was being physical, running the ball with Edwards, and then Edwards rushes for less than 50 yards. And then this Texas defense that lost T. Sweat and Byron Murphy, we go D-line by committee, and all of a sudden we're still swarming around. So I'm like, okay, this is what I really love to see. Obviously, the 2 turnovers is what I think was the real turning point for Texas in the second quarter, when they were able to force those. And again, making Michigan switch from that ground and pound to this quick passing offense that we've never really seen them do. And then Davis Warren was deer in headlights. And then just kind of, flipping the switch on Michigan, and then we're on the road, and then we're playing against a team that is the national defending champion, and you steamroll. So I was very happy to see that. Offensively, I don't have just a couple takeaways actually. The dump off passing game. The dump off passing game was something that I thought was super interesting in the way that Sarkisian was able to utilize that to move the ball, because you still didn't want to have to go head up, play over play with this Michigan defense, because you're going to respect them, right, coming into the game and know what they could do from a physicality standpoint. Instead, we're going to stay out of the trenches some. We're going to just kind of dump the pass off to Blue, dump the pass off to Wisner, and then just allow them to make plays in space. So I thought that was really good for what they did. Again, just seeing this offense still be able to move and be this mobile with so many moving parts. Shout out to Steve Sarkisian in that offensive game plan that they really utilized against Michigan. So I was super happy to see this team just kind of take a whole lot of pieces and really be able to methodically move the ball on this Michigan team. Kudos to Texas, man. Kudos to them.
Yeah, just, responding to a couple of your points, the defense kind of forced, Michigan to play the game that they didn't want to play, right? Michigan's only path victory was, really dominating time of possession and being able to run the ball and keeping Quinn Ewers off the field. And, our defense forced Michigan into a passing offense. And that's just a game they were not going to win against the Texas Longhorns. And then you talk about the offense and the quick passes, right? Getting the ball out to, Jaden Blue and Trey Wisner out in space and allowing them to pick up first downs. Only 2 wide receivers caught a pass in this game, which is crazy, right? Only 2 wide receivers for Texas. And that deep room caught a pass. Of course, Jonte Cook had one that was called back. DeAndre Moore had one that was called back. But still, on the box score, only 2 wide receivers caught a pass in this game, and Texas was dominant throughout. I had some takeaways, from the game as well. And also, what you said, like, you still somewhat expect Michigan to be Michigan, right? You go into this game and the spread is 7.5. But like I said, I didn't think the game would be over at halftime. You know what I mean? I didn't think we'd be celebrating in the second quarter. Like, damn, Michigan.
That
they don't even look like they belong on the field. You know what I mean? Like, so.
John, I have a question for you. I have a question for you as a part of your takeaway. Is this Texas offensive line the best we're seeing in college football right now?
So I actually that is one of my takeaways. Obviously there's 130 FBS programs, so I haven't seen all of them, but yeah, for sure. They're definitely on that short list of one of the best offensive lines in the country. So just getting into my takeaways. The first one is, coaching and the coaching quarterback combo is going to win you a lot of games. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. When you look at it, football is complex, but it can really be boiled down to, just being simple at times. And, a lot of times you can look at all these matchups, but the two that really matter the most are the quarterback and the coach, right? If you can win the quarterback matchup, if you can win the coaching matchup, you're going to win a lot of games, right? We saw that last year, going into Alabama, right? I can't say that Nick Saban is, Steve Sarkisian is a better coach than Nick Saban, but Quinn Ewers was way better than Jalen Milroe on that day, right? And that's why Texas was able to get that victory in this game against Michigan, right? Quinn Ewers, levels ahead of Davis Warren, right? Steve Sarkisian levels ahead of Sharon Moore, and you saw that, and that's why that game was, over in the first half, right? We saw Brady and Belichick dominate for years because they won that matchup week in and week out. Now we're seeing it with Mahomes, right? Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid, right? Because you have the quarterback and because you have the coach, you're going to win a lot of football games, right? And now when you look at Quinn and Steve Sarkisian, when you look at the rest of their schedule, outside of Georgia, I'm not going to sit here and be delusional and say that, Steve Sarkisian is a better coach than Kirby Smart right now. But that quarterback, debate is debatable, right? Between Carson Beck and Quinn Ewers. You look at any other game on the regular season schedule right now, Texas wins the quarterback and coaching matchup definitively, right? Steve Sarkisian and Quinn Ewers are going to be better than any other quarterback and coach they face outside of the Georgia game and their regular season schedule. And then, if you want to kind of foreshadow it to the playoffs, right? There's not a single team in college football right now, to me, that can say they have a better quarterback and coach than Steve Sarkisian and Quinn Ewers definitively outside of the Georgia Bulldogs. And even, like I said, with Georgia, it's debatable between Carson Beck and Quinn Ewers. So because you've gotten to a point where you can dominate the quarterback and coaching matchup in almost every game you play, that's why we're seeing Texas perform at the highest level in college football. Experience on the offensive line, right? Tony talked about the offensive line. The experience on the offensive line continues to be a needle mover. You returned 4 out of 5 starters from last year on this offensive line. The 5th starter, Kristen Jones, going to the Arizona Cardinals in the draft, come into the season with over 100 combined starts at the University of Texas, right? They didn't transfer in. All of those starts were at the University of Texas. You come in and you just see the continuity and the chemistry on that offensive line, and they were able to go in and dominate that matchup. Over the first 2 games, Texas has 333 rushing yards, right? Texas has 333 rushing yards in just their first 2 games, and Quinn Ewers has only been sacked once on 63 dropbacks so far. So, we talk about, all the eye candy on the outside, all of the great defensive players. Texas is winning games because they're strong in the trenches and they're stronger than a lot of teams. And we look at 2 teams in college football right now that have replaced their entire offensive line. They're struggling, right? Michigan, we just saw it. They replaced their entire offensive line. They are now a shell of themselves, right? And then one of our biggest rivals, Oklahoma, they replaced their entire offensive line, and them boys almost lost to Houston, right? Almost messed up my parlay. I'm like, what y'all doing? Like, the game was 16-12. Like, they should be blowing Houston out. You know what I'm saying? Like, but you replace 5 starters on that offensive line, and it takes time, to rebuild that, right? That's where games are won, especially in the SEC. And so Texas coming in, with 4 or 5 starters returning, all that experience on the offensive line, they're just bullying people at the point of attack. And then the last takeaway I have is it's a sign of elite recruiting, but also great culture when true freshmen can come in from day one and not only contribute, but contribute at a high level. Tony, we've seen three true freshmen be absolutely phenomenal for this Texas football team in just 2 games. Ryan Wingo, 125 total scrimmage yards in 2 games, led Texas in receiving in the first game, led Texas in rushing in the second game, right? I wish I had a stat guy to tell me, like, when's the last time that happened, right? Like a true freshman wide receiver led his team in rushing and receiving over his first 2 games. Jarrett Gibson, the Longhorns' leading rusher, through 2 games, 103
I
rushing
mentioned him
yards,
last week. I mentioned him
right?
last week. How much
And
I
two
liked him.
touchdowns. True freshman out of IMG in Florida has looked great early on. Now he's not your typical true freshman. He's 20 years old. You know what I'm saying? So, he's a little older than, a typical true freshman, but nonetheless, he's come right in and been, phenomenal. And that's, also, a good sign, coming in and, running behind one of the best offensive lines in the country. And I talked about how Steve Sarkisian's system is really running back friendly. And then you're going to love this one, Colin Simmons, right? One of the greatest players to ever come out of Duncanville. Only Longhorn thus far with a sack, right? He had a sack in the Michigan game. Highest graded Texas player on offense and defense in the Michigan game. So like I said, that's a sign of elite recruiting, but also great culture when true freshmen can come in and fit right in on a team with this much talent. Like I said, a whole lot of belt to ass. Texas went in there and just dominated Michigan, whether it was freshmen, sophomores, juniors, seniors, whatever, right? Texas proved they were a national championship contender. A quick word from our sponsors, and we get into some specifics, right? Players of the game, units, right? Who dominated, who deserves kudos and flowers from this matchup this past Saturday. All right, today's episode of Locked On Longhorns is brought to you by 5-Hour Energy. Before your workout, you want to get in shape but having trouble staying motivated? Make 5-Hour Energy shots part of your lifestyle and get the energy boost you need to get fit. We all know you sometimes do not want to go to the gym. Take a 5-Hour Energy shot to give you the feeling and alertness so you can get to the gym. With zero sugar and a convenient portable size, it's the perfect pick-me-up for getting stuff done. The 5-Hour Energy website has flavors galore like watermelon, tropical burst, grape, berry, and more. There is a flavor for everyone. Try them all. On the site, you even have the option to build your own 12-pack or 24-pack. You choose the flavors, and it is delivered right to your door. If you go to 5hourenergy.com, that is the number 5hourenergy.com, and get some 5-Hour Energy product today, you can use my promo code LOCKEDONCFB to receive 20% off your order. This offer is valid only until September 30th, the end of the month, on one order, and cannot be used with other promotions. The code is not good on subscription orders. Go to 5hourenergy.com today. All right, bringing my brother Tony Monk back in. Like I said, every Monday we're giving certain players and units on this football team flowers unless they lose. You know what I'm saying? Then we're just going to talk a whole lot of trash. But, since they 2-0, like I said, the biggest win of the season thus far against Michigan. Some would say Clemson and Georgia, but that's neutral site in Atlanta. Damn near a home game for the Georgia Bulldogs. Texas actually had to go on the road in the belly of the beast and beat up on that Michigan team. Knocked them all the way down from 10 to 17, by the way, in the newest AP poll rankings. But, Tony, who do you have as your players, units of the game, people that stood out to you in this matchup?
I love when you can do both work in the the trenches as well as be effective as far as moving the ball. I got to give it to Gunnar Helm, man, the tight end. He was definitely one of the guys. You spoke about him earlier. When you talk about a guy that was helping as far as the blocking scheme against this tough Michigan defense, is really good in the trenches, knows how to set the edge if they needed to. And Gunnar Helm was sticking his nose in it. Obviously led with passing with receiving on the day, just being really effective in the passing game. So horns up to that man. Horns up to that man. Jarrett Gibson, I talked about him last week. Said I really liked him. Said I really wanted him to get a lot more touches. Obviously, he led with carries for the day. And I think before people may look at the stat sheet and say, well, the running backs didn't run for over 4 yards to carry, but it was effective runs for them to run for about 3.9, 3.7. And then he scored a touchdown. So if it turns into points, I'm okay with how things went that day. And obviously, Wingo's rush makes the numbers kind of balance out, look a little bit better with the 55-yard run. But I was very happy to see Gibson get his opportunities and know that he can continue to be a factor throughout this season. How about some love to the kicker, man? Dominic Ibata, 5 for 5 so far this season. The kicking game matters.
No, Bert Auburn, the kicker.
Oh yeah. Drill field goals, 52 and 37 yards. And now he's 5 for 5 so far. So 3+ from 50. Very happy to see that. Those are my 3 guys. Shout out though again to that offensive line. Very, very impressive. Everybody gets it, man. Very, very impressive against this Michigan defense. I cannot keep saying that.
Yeah, for sure. I talked about it on my last show, like right after the game. The running backs combined for 140 total yards, right? None of them were just individually spectacular, right? None of them, had a Doak Walker type of award type performance or a Heisman type of performance or anything like that. But when you can go up against that defense and get 140 combined yards, from your running backs, then you add another 55-yard run from Ryan Wingo. Just an exceptional performance. In the running game, for sure. And then, like you said, getting the ball out, to the running backs. I thought you would mention Andrew Makuba, so I didn't write him down because I'm like, I know Tony's going to mention Andrew Makuba.
I had specific guys, and I was like, I wanted to be a little different today with Gunner and Dominic. So, that's my fault for leaving Andrew off this one.
Yeah, and shout out, Gunnar Helm for sure. With the 7 catches, 98 yards and a touchdown. He had a career day and, one of the biggest games of his life up until this point. But got to give a shout out to Andrew Makuba. Our pass defense was not great last year at all, right? You could say that was the Achilles heel, not being able to get a pass rush with our edges and not being able to cover on the back end, especially with our safeties. And so you go out and get a 3-year starter, an Austin area kid, and Andrew Makuba from Clemson, get him in the transfer portal. You get him for games like this, you know what I mean? And, pass deflections, interceptions, tackles for loss. Number 4 was all over the field on defense, just spectacular. So I, got to give a shout out to Andrew Makuba. Like I said, I didn't write it down because I thought Tony would say it, but I'd be remiss to not give him a player of the game award for sure.
John, I failed it on that. That was my test. Sorry.
No, you good. I thought it was easy, right? So I'm like, I'm gonna go a little harder because I thought it was easy. My players of the game, the interior offensive line, right? Jake Majors at center, Hayden Connor at left guard, Devon Campbell at right guard. We talked about how Michigan had to play one way to win this game, right? And I thought that, coming into the game, there was only one clear advantage that Michigan had, and that was Kenneth Grant and Mason Graham up front, the big defensive tackles going against our interior offensive line. I thought if there was one place that Michigan had a marquee advantage coming into this game, it was there, right? But this is why you play the games, right? This is why we don't, just mark down the games on paper. This is why you actually play them. Would you believe me if I told you in the offseason that Jake Majors, Devon Campbell, and Hayden Connor would dominate Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant up front? Because that's exactly what happened. You talk about, I can't believe it. Yeah, I can't remember if it was the second quarter or the third quarter, but there was a point where it felt like we were running the ball 6-7 yards for a clip at a time, right? Just gashing them with Trey Wisner, right? I think it was after Jaden Blue went out for a little bit with the ankle injury, and then we just started gashing them with Trey Wisner, gashing them with Jared Gibson, right? Just picking up yards, moving down the field, and then ultimately scoring points. We were able to get into Michigan territory damn near on every offensive drive, right? And so, have to give all the credit in the world to Jake Majors, Devon Campbell, and Hayden Connor. What they were able to do in terms of pass blocking and run blocking, really neutralizing, Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant, right? They weren't loud at all, on Saturday, and that's because of our offensive line. So shout out to them boys. And then cornerbacks, right? I want to give credit to all the cornerbacks because, like we said, we kind of went in there, punched, Michigan in the mouth and then made them play the style of football that we wanted them to play, right? They obviously wanted to come in and run the ball at a high level. You talked about, Donovan Edwards only having 43 total yards, only 70 total yards through the first 2 games. I mean, I don't want to call the brother overrated, but I mean, why was he on the cover of NCAA?
That's real important. You know what I'm saying? Talking for the game for a running back that had the stats that he would have in big games, running for over 100 yards, running for over 200 yards. Sometimes, like Texas really showed that they can step up and stop a guy like Edwards. That grows a whole lot of confidence moving forward this season.
Yeah. So, like I said, they should have put, Coach Prime, somebody else on the cover of NCAA 25 because Donovan Edwards ain't looking like a cover athlete right now. He damn sure ain't looking like Quinn Ewers and Travis Hunter. But you got to give credit to the corners, right? Malik Muhammad, Jade Barron, another strong performance. Jalen Gilbo really coming downhill, tackles for loss, pass breakups. I mean, the safeties were great, but, we really forced, Michigan, right? Our corners play one-on-one on the outside. We stayed in the box, stopped the run, and forced Davis Warren to make tight window throws. And guess what? Davis Warren can't make tight window throws at this point in his career. And then obviously they talked about it on the broadcast. Joel Klatt, Alex Orji comes in, a Texas kid. He's really athletic, but Michigan runs the ball 90% of the time when he comes in the game. He did not attempt a single pass in this game. Pete Kwiatkowski and the defense were all over it. I mean, they just stacked the box and absolutely stopped him on any read options or any, exotic things they tried to do in the running game. So I thought our corners, being able to handle those one-on-one matchups, not needing too much help on the outside, allowed us to stop Michigan's run game and allowed us to make them play the type of style that we wanted them to play, which obviously, just fed right into Texas' hands. So, a dominant performance on all sides of the ball, kicker, special teams, defense, offense. I thought the coaching staff was great. And like Joel Klatt said on the broadcast, this team is for real. This Texas football team is for real. And if you want to win a national championship, you're going to have to go through the Longhorns this season. All right, a quick word from our sponsors, and then we get into some of the Longhorns that dominated over the weekend in the NFL. All right, today's episode of I'm premature. Hold on. All right, today's episode of Locked On Longhorns also brought to you by Ibotta. Let me get on the solo screen here. Sandals, sunscreen, snacks for the kids. What do these have in common? You're probably buying a ton again this summer going into the fall. But don't stress about the cost. Use Ibotta and get cash back on all of your purchases when you stock up on all of your summer essentials. Ibotta is a free app that lets you earn cash back every time you shop. Earn on hundreds of items from groceries to beauty supplies, even toys, so you can make sure you're beating inflation no matter what you're purchasing. The average Ibotta user earns $256 per year. That could cover the cost of an entire shopping trip, that flight you've been eyeing, or the fancy dinner you've been craving. Other apps give you points that don't amount to much. With Ibotta, you earn cash back that you can withdraw to your bank account, PayPal, or gift cards. Simply add offers in the app, upload your receipt, and voila, the money is yours. It's time you join the over 50 million users who use Ibotta to earn cash back every time they shop. Right now, Ibotta is offering our listeners $5 just for trying Ibotta by using the code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE when you register. Just go to the App Store or Google Play Store and download the free Ibotta app to start earning cash back and use code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. That's IBOTTA in the Google Play or App Store and use code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. All right, finishing up here with some notable, NFL Longhorn performances from over the weekend. Now, I will let you know that we are recording this prior to the Rams-Lions Sunday night game. So if Jordan Whittington goes off, you're right, you're not going to hear it in this segment, so don't jump at me. Like I said, we are recording this before the Rams-Lions game, so anything Jordan Whittington does will not be in this segment, right? But before that, we did have some really strong Longhorn performances. How about the start to the NFL season? Xavier Worthy, the fastest man in NFL history at the NFL Combine, 68 total yards on just 3 touches and 2 touchdowns. We saw the jet sweep where he just could not be touched. I think 21 yards coming off the edge, just blurring past everybody to score the Chiefs' first touchdown of the season. And then we saw on a cover 2 bust when he got past Marlon Humphrey and he was wide open for a touchdown. Really one of the biggest reasons that the Chiefs won against the Ravens on a really good Thursday night game, a really good start to the season. So Xavier Worthy came right out, a first round pick. And like I said, averaged over 22 yards a touch and was special in his first game with Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. And the way that Andy Reid is going to use him throughout the season, man, I mean, it's just special. And we saw it from day one. Bijan Robinson, right? Even though they lost to the Steelers, the Falcons utilized them a lot, right? That's something that we saw last year, right? We felt like Bijan Robinson wasn't utilized enough. We didn't know what the hell Arthur Smith was doing, right? Now this new coach is really using Bijan Robinson, 23 total touches for 111 yards. Like I said, they didn't get the win, but it's good to see Bijan getting out there, and we know what he can do when he gets the ball in his hands. How about DeMarvion Overshawn? You see it on the shirt. Shout out the Cowboys. You know what I'm saying? Tony had a Cowboys shirt on as well. Dominant performance by my Cowboys against the Cleveland Browns. But DeMarvion Overshawn in his first NFL game, right? Tearing his ACL in the preseason last year. We didn't get to see him. 3rd round pick, comes out and dominates in his first game in Mike Zimmer's defense. 11 total tackles and a sack on Deshaun Watson in a game where, Mike Zimmer's defense, once again, for the Cowboys was dominant. It's good to see the Cowboys actually utilizing linebackers now, real linebackers, and DeMarvion Overshawn is one of those, a special performance. How about Byron Murphy and Tavondre Sweat up front, right? They were both really good up front in their debuts. Byron Murphy for the Seahawks win against the Broncos. The Broncos only scored 1 offensive touchdown. The Seahawks got the victory. And then Tavondre Sweat win against the Bears with the Titans. The Bears did get the victory, a comeback win, but they did not score an offensive touchdown, right? I think they had an interception return, like a fumble return, and then a bunch of field goals, right? So Tavondre Sweat and Byron Murphy were both really good up front in their debuts. And obviously we expect nothing different than what we saw last year at the University of Texas when they were both All-Americans. And we're going to give some love to the Longhorns in the NFL, the special teamers, right? Cameron Dicker the kicker, 3 for 3 on field goals with a long of 53 yards, 10 out of 22 points for the Chargers in a victory over the Raiders. And then Justin Tucker, 2 for 3 on field goals, still struggling from that 50-yard mark. I don't know if he's lost it, you know what I mean? But we know he's never missed a field goal 30 yards or less. And so he was 2 for 3 on his field goals, scored 8 total points out of 20 in a loss to the Chiefs. So, you know, it's good to finally talk about Longhorns actually doing well in the NFL again, right? We went so long without getting some Longhorns drafted. Now we had 11, you know, this past year. We really have Texas players making their mark in the National Football League once again, and it's beautiful to see. So thank you all for tuning in to another episode of Locked On Longhorns, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Pro Football Focus, Max Chadwick, one of my favorite guests. He comes on all the time. Just amazing commentary every time he comes on. He was at Texas, Michigan. Can't wait to hear his thoughts on what he saw from the Longhorns on tomorrow's episode of Locked On Longhorns. Hook 'em. Peace.